Yeah, let me turn off my phone so that it will not bother us.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. All right. We are live. This is episode, oh my gosh, 7. Since we did that one episode that was like an off episode, I'm constantly like a little bit off because it's, it should be episode 6, part 6 of the Grishaverse, but it's episode 7, part 6 of the Grishaverse. Today we're covering the second half of Six of Crows. Yay! So we are going to start with our little synopsis of what we read. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. What we read this time around, and then we'll jump into some discussion on the second half of this wondrous book. So, Nick, take it away.
Okay, y'all. It's time to wrap up Six of Crows. Here we go, and what a fucking ride! Our not-so-merry band finally shows up in Deerholm, but what's the best way to get into an ice prison? Dress up as prisoners! Brilliant! What could go wrong? The guys and girls are separated because we can't have nice things like a co-ed prison. Luckily, Kaz planned for that, and they use just to let the boys escape. Kaz and Wyland then go to free Nina and Inej. Once they're freed, Kaz and Nina go to find Boyol Bayer, but come across some guards in a torture chamber. Gun goes off, prison gets put into lockdown. They have to get out of the lockdown area, so the team regroups, and Inej climbs the incinerator, throw down a rope so everyone else can get out. But Kaz has gone to find Pekka Rollins and even their score. You'll remember from the previous summary, as a kid, Pekka Rollins fucked over Kaz. Anyway, Jesper waits at the bottom for Kaz, but will Kaz return in time? He does, but there's no Pekka Rollins. And they continue on. They need to enter the castle, so they split up to get in. Kaz and Matthias enter by crossing the moat and disguising themselves as guards. Inej and Nina dress as performers and try to use the front door, but Inej looks suspicious and has to wait, which means Inej, her former madam from the menagerie, Helene. Oh, fuck. She starts to tell the guards about Inej, but just then all the alarms go off. Wyland and Jesper had snuck in and broke the chain holding up the gate. Cue the klaxon. Wee-oo.
In the distraction, everyone gets in. Woo. Nina comes across Yarrow Brum, Matthias's old boss, who they thought had drowned in the shipwreck that Nina and Matthias were in. Turns out he's fine. Luckily, he doesn't recognize her, so Nina tries to get Boyol Bear's location out of him, and he takes her to a vault that is now being used as a lab. There's a bunch of cells with Grisha trapped inside. He locks Nina inside a cell. It turns out he did recognize her. Sneaky. Just then, Matthias appears, but he isn't there to help Nina. No, it turns out he went straight to Brum, his old mentor, and betrayed the crows. He wants Nina to be drugged with the Judah Parem because she got him locked up in Hellgate. He feels guilty, but not that guilty, and it's a little late for that anyway. Brum reveals that Yul Bear is in the same prison, and that because Matthias was such a good boy, he gets to be a Driscoll again. But just then, Matthias decides he really likes Nina, likes her, and maybe not all Grisha are bad. Why, one of his best friends might be a Grisha. He knocks Brum out, which is actually the plan all along. He takes Brum's key, locks him up, and goes to get Nina out. Woo.
When they finally... Wait, no, what am I doing?
I don't know. Tara's supposed to read now.
Yeah, it's my turn. All right. I forgot I was muted for a second there. I'm trying to tweet about the fact that we're live because I'm always late on Twitter with this webcast. All right. So
thinking it's my turn.
Yeah, no. So Matthias and Nina go to find Boyol Bayer. Instead, they find his son Kuwei. Okay. Who is a Grisha. Bo apparently died in battle, but Kuwei knows the secrets of Yurda Param. Before escaping, Kuwei destroys the laboratory they are using to manufacture it. Go him. Now everyone just needs to actually escape. Kaz, Matthias, Nina, and Kuwei all fall into the moat. Was it a moat? They fall into something. They fall into a very cold river. They ingest pellets, allowing them to breathe underwater. They follow the current, hope they don't get swept away and drowned. Jesper, Wyland, and Inej escape by drilling a hole in the glass and hijacking a tank, though. So they're the ones we really need to keep an eye on, apparently. Nina, Matthias, Kuwei, and Kaz wash up on the riverbanks, and they see the other group's tank being chased by more tanks. But it's all fine because Inej and company destroy the bridge behind them. Then they run into a Fjerdan army, which has a drugged up Grisha. The army is supposed to attack the group if they don't hand Kue over. Nina takes Yurta Param despite the risks of getting addicted and basically single-handedly defeats the army and the Yurta-fueled Grisha. For good measure, she also heals Matthias after he is shot, which he would have died otherwise, so, go Nina. The crew boards the ship and leaves Fjerda, but that's not all. I feel like I should pull out a ShamWow.
When they finally get back, Van Eck tries to double-cross the crew, naturally. He uses Grisha to take them out and try to destroy the ship. Kaz reminds him that Wylan is still on the ship with Nina, assuming that Van Eck won't want to kill his son. Turns out Van Eck doesn't really like Wylan at all, though, and whoops, miscalculation. But as it turns out, Wylan was already there, disguised as Kue. Ouch. Kaz will only tell Van Eck where the real Kue is if they're allowed to leave safely with their money. Van Eck commands his team to kill everyone but Kaz. Then Kaz lets slip that he's worried about Inej. And Van Eck notices. He tells the Grisha to take the money and Inej, and they fly off. Van Eck says they have 1 week to exchange Kue for Inej. It turns out that Jesper accidentally gave their plans away to Pekka Rollins when he was being a gambler. The crew, minus Inej, go to see Pekka Rollins because he owes Kaz a favor. Oh yeah, by the way, Kaz let Pekka live back in the prison. We forgot to mention that. Kaz demands that Rollins pass along a message and also 200,000 crews for their next heist. Rollins agrees, but he says he doesn't remember Kaz from when Kaz was little. The crew leaves, and Rollins realizes he's been pickpocketed, so he vows to kill Kaz. Honestly, kind of fitting, because I'm pretty sure Kaz has vowed to kill him. Yikes.
All right. The mic drop where Dad really doesn't like Wylan was this time around. It's like I knew it was coming because I read it once before, but the first time it's like, oh shit, that's rough, man. That's harsh.
Yeah. It was
harsh.
I always like obviously it was like, damn, you could sense there's some family drama there when your child just wants to run away from being rich and literally hang out with people called the dregs. But didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah,
because there's difference between we don't get along and I'll just murder him.
Yup.
So discussion questions. I hope we can come up. I actually had a hard time coming up with discussion questions for the second half of this book. Mostly because there's so many of them that I did some searches online and everything, but it just didn't really, I don't know, none of them really spoke to me. They were all kind of bland. So I think we've been pretty good about kind of going off on our own tangents. But so when we last met and discussed the first half of this book, we all said who our favorite characters were. Did anybody's favorite character change after reading the second half of this book?
Not in my mind.
Nope.
Yeah, me either. Did your least? Here's the real. Did your least favorite character change?
Hell's to the no. Should have let him die from that bullet, girl.
Yeah, I think my estimation of Jesper definitely goes down by the end of the book, but he was already just barely above Matthias, so
to me,
he was enough above Matthias that he's still now just barely above Matthias, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I were Kaz or any of the other characters, I would, ironically, I think I'd trust Jesper least because of his gambling addiction.
I think this is the moment where we really realize how bad the addiction is too. Because clearly he is in rather deep, if he literally just gambled away their secrets. And full on, at this moment when this happened, like I couldn't even bring myself to hate him or like dislike him. I just felt pity. I was like, oof, you're a fuck up and you know it, don't you?
Well, I mean, and the thing is, like, I sometimes I'm not sure that these books handle addiction the best. But I mean, to be honest, like having had some family members who not gambling addictions, but who had some other pretty serious addictions, you don't trust these people. You can't, no matter how much you love them and care about them. And you know, and I think that was the hard part for, you know, Kaz especially, was that, you know, he was snarky about Jesper's gambling and stuff beforehand, and he knew that he had to keep Jesper close that night, but he still didn't expect Jesper to do what he did.
Yeah, I didn't
just so blatantly.
Like how bad it was.
And it wasn't, I know it wasn't on purpose, but that's the thing. Like sometimes you hurt the people you love the most when you do things that aren't on purpose.
Yeah. And I think
That's
the
true.
biggest thing was, I don't think Kaz had really taken it seriously until now. And I think this happening was like absolutely him being like, shit, this is a problem, not just a ha, like, I'm a college kid, I'm an alcoholic, like that kind of addiction versus like actually a problem.
Well, and I think, like, honestly, what kind of puts Jesper and Matthias on the same level for me is that at the end of this book, you're seeing Matthias, like, he wants to change. He recognizes his hatred and like where it comes from. And, you know, I'm not saying he's done the changing he needs to do yet, but like he recognizes that he has these feelings, why he has these feelings, and that they you know, that they should change. Whereas Jesper just seems kind of like even when Kaz confronts him about how he gave away their position, essentially, he's just like, but I didn't mean to. Like, hey man, you didn't mean to. You should at least say like you're sorry and you're gonna try not to do it again.
Yep. Apologies are not just saying I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah, they're actually attempting to change, you know, things about yourself sometimes, which in this case, you know. So yeah, I wouldn't say this necessarily outright changed who my least favorite character it certainly didn't change who my most favorite character was, other than I mostly just feel really bad for Nina and what she is going through, because she like legit sacrifice, like she very possibly had been sacrificing herself to save her friends, like, so like that didn't change. But...
Yeah, I think this moment was like also that moment where I was like, damn, Nina, because like, you know, she was always like very much the best, but also she was like very chill, you know, and like very carefree in a way that like making such a giant sacrifice doesn't really like normally vibe with a character like that. But then you see her do it and you're like, there was no other thing that she would have done. And that's why it was so good. Still hate Matthias to the depths of hell, though.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Keep him down there. In my mind, the idea of like disliking Jesper as much as Matthias, I'm like, God, what? No.
Have you guys seen American History X?
No, I hear it's really good.
With Edward Norton.
Edward Norton, yeah.
So in it, Edward Norton is a skinhead Nazi. I'm pretty sure it's been a long time since I've seen it, but he straight up has like Nazi tattoos on his body, from what I remember. And he murders, I'm pretty sure murders a black guy in cold blood, and ends up in prison. And it's basically, I don't want to call it a redemption story per se. I think that's a stretch considering, but it's very much about, the idea that somebody can grow and change. If you've never seen it, I think honestly now is probably a good time for anybody to watch it, because I think hopefully, fingers crossed, a lot of the people who have those sorts of feelings, maybe not a lot, but some, maybe only a handful, but some will have a little bit of a comeuppance in the next few years, where they have to learn some hard lessons. But yeah, and honestly, like having watched that movie, I think I'm a little bit more open to, to the Matthias's character growth, even though there's very little of it by the end of this book. It's very clear that he has seen, kind of a new light and a new way of doing things, and is focused on at least trying.
Someone who has a somewhat complicated worldview about Nazism and Judaism, as I have Holocaust survivors in my family, and I also have Hitler Youth in my family. What you're indoctrinated in as a youth, yes, you can evolve and you change over time, but he's 18 years old and he's been indoctrinated in this since he was basically as long as he can remember. So that's, in all fairness to him, that's what he knows, right?
Yeah. Oh, and it's not an easy thing to just up and change magically. You know what I mean?
I think the thing that is a struggle for me here is that he has started that process, but he has not committed to it and he has not finished it. And I think, to me, saying that you want to change and that you maybe see the light is so much different than actually changing. So the fact that we have not gotten the completion of that journey yet makes me still dislike him, because to me, until he proves otherwise, he is the lowest of the low. And I mean, I also have very, very strong negative feelings to everything his character represents because of a lot of personal, like,
he's a
directed at me by people of that age when I was that age. And so, logically, yes, I understand what indoctrination in beliefs do to a person, because let's be very fair, I grew up being kind of homophobic and saying some very harmful things without realizing how harmful it was. And then I grew up, I went to college, I spoke to LGBTQ folks, I realized that they were just regular people and that I had my head on my ass and a lot of internalized homophobia. And, and I grew and I changed. And none of that shit that I did when I was a kid was right. And that harm that I caused back then, I can't just go back and say that it was okay because, I grew, And so on that level, I do have sympathy for growing up in a place that lets you that makes you a terrible person without you knowing or understanding why those views are so warped and evil. But I also know that the harm that caused doesn't go away even after amends have been made. And amends haven't been made yet. Amends have just sort of entered his mind as a thing that, maybe this should happen? And but even then, not really? So I'm just very still upset at him.
No, I mean, so that doesn't. Those feelings don't go away either.
Yeah, it's
no, he's a young fascist who is finding his humanity with one specific person of the other group, but he hasn't had enough of a worldview to meet any others yet. It's the one at the moment that's.
And I think
his humanity.
Yeah.
And he realized, because you meet them. It's like there's a big difference when it's just the generic other from far away as in the enemy and someone you meet personally and have a personal relationship.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. And I think that's another thing that kind of I struggled with him. Cause like I find it real difficult to believe that every single Grisha he met was like a terrible person.
Well, but that's the thing.
But he never met them.
Yeah, he didn't really meet them. He didn't get to know them, and that's the point. Like he doesn't.
Yeah,
all he knows is what happened to like his family, and then every time he's met a Grisha, and again, not excusing what he did, but every time he's met a Grisha since then, it was as part of the Juskala. So he just they just took them prisoner and didn't they didn't care about who they were. They didn't know who they were.
Yeah, no, it just my problem from all of it just stems with like the level of violence that is directed to the Grisha by him. It's not just like he says mean things. It's like they murder them,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just makes me be like, okay, so you met a girl and she's cute, and she also happens to be one of the people you were taught to hate and murder, and now you're like, okay, well, I like this cute girl, and I'm horny, and I'm having second thoughts because I am a good person and I wouldn't be horny for a bad person. And I'm literally like, I think that's why I side-eye his arc so much, because granted, I know there's more. I know it's supposed to be more. I know he really is changing, et cetera, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, your dick acted up. And now you're like morally righting yourself. You fell in love with quote unquote a witch and you can't deal with that. And I'm just like, catch me not believing a thing that comes out of your mouth until you actually start treating other Grisha with respect. And, actively.
Really, honestly, like other people in general too. Like he has like a sort of negative respect for like Kaz and stuff, but like he's just a really judgmental person. But then again, aren't all fascists?
I mean, yeah, but it's just like everything about his personality just like rubs me wrong because I'm like, oh, you're so dislikable. Why does Nina have this terrible taste? Are you really that handsome? Because I fucking doubt it.
So I'm going to defend fascists here for a second.
It's
not just fascists that are judgmental. I think humans in general are judgmental. It's just, are they judgments that we agree with or not? And from your perspective, I'm judgmental, but you like my judgments, presumably.
Yeah, well, except for when you talk
we're
about
all judgmental.
So here's where the issue lies for me, right? Is sure, everybody can be judgmental. It is what you do with those judgments that matters.
Yeah.
And fascism at its heart takes those judgments and then uses them to persecute and oppress, right? And specifically vulnerable populations. So that's the big difference to me. Yeah, sure. Anybody can be I'm judgmental as hell. But I'm not going to selectively choose groups that I'm going to specifically ostracize and often physically intimidate and punish because of those judgments.
Yeah, often. Yeah.
So, yeah, and Matthias is a good stand-in for this, right? Because one of the things that we often see in the real world is people have these hatreds until they are confronted with something different, something that forces them to re-examine those hatreds, right? You see that all the time in the Republican Party, where up until a certain point, people are like, no, you can't do stem cell research. That's completely immoral. Oh, wait, this might actually save my husband's life or significantly improve their quality of life. Maybe we should look at stem cell research.
Also, stem cell research clarification literally doesn't come from killing babies like people come to fuck down. Also, the whole argument that we shouldn't use stem cells because it harms embryos is false, and it is also just sort of another way to put down poor people because only poor people need to worry about things about abortions, whereas things like IVF and artificial fertilization kill more embryos than things like abortions, and people are fine with artificial fertilization because they're rich.
There's a lot of people who actually aren't, but that's another argument.
Well, yes, but there isn't a big public showdown to shut down artificial fertilization. It is to shut down abortion
until they succeed, and then they'll go for the next step.
Well, yes, but the problem is that they target the poor first. That's the train of thought here. But yeah, no, stem cell research, so good.
Well,
they're so
not to get like entirely off topic, but like we're already talking about Matthias, and we've brought up his thing with Nina. So like, and we've already kind of talked about this a little bit too. But like, how do we really feel about Nina and Matthias now? Because I mean, obviously, the first half of the book, it's like, what the, how, even, why? But then you learn obviously quite a bit more about their history together, and
yeah, it's the Blue Lagoon relationship. They're the only two people there, so they fall for each other. Would they fall for each other under different circumstances if they were in a room with 100 choices? Probably not.
To be honest, if they were like 30 or 40, they probably wouldn't have fallen for each other.
If it was literally just this group without that previous knowing each other, I still don't think they would. But no, this part made me be like, all right, I get it. I don't understand it or support it, but your decision is not as bad as I thought it was. He kind of saved your life and is an asshole through it.
She saw warmth and growth and possibility.
Yeah, I mean,
still think she's got terrible taste, but at least I understand her taste.
Yeah, it's the people with the Sansa and Sandor shippers. It's the same thing. This is the relationship they wanted.
At least it's not the Littlefinger Sansa shippers.
Are there some?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh yes.
That's a terrifying place of the internet. Do not go there. I thought
I definitely think a lot of it is like you said, like the Blue Lagoon thing. It's just the two of them. I think if they were, I think that also we have to specify like the ages. Even if they were just the two of them alone, I don't necessarily think they would have felt or fallen, quote unquote, for each other the way they did if they were older. But they're young, and neither one of them had known much outside of, like, Nina hadn't really known much outside of what she saw at the Little Palace and at the orphanage when they were there while the war was going on with Alina and the Darkling, and Matthias, he saw terrible things, with losing his family, but then he went and joined the Driscoll, and he hasn't done anything. He hadn't done anything beyond that. Like he saw the bad thing, and then he went and joined the quote unquote army. I'm using quote unquote a lot because I'm using actual air quotes, but like when this is a podcast, do that.
No, he did not join the army. That would be like joining the Wehrmacht. He joined the Waffen SS.
Huh?
He joined the SS.
Yeah.
Which are like the hardcore of the hardcore,
as
opposed to the Wehrmacht, which are the poor saps who just got drafted into the army.
Yeah, I think the funniest thing to me is that the whole time this is happening, I was just like, Sweetie, no. Sweetie, stop it. No. At Nina. But it also, like, literally, it makes perfect sense because, first of all, they're teenagers. Second of all, they have hormones. Third of all, genders. Other warm human. Ah!
Other warm human.
And then also just the whole, hate and any sort of intense emotion can easily be warped into weird emotional attachments that can be misconstrued as love.
Oh,
Low-key, I was watching this like they Stockholm syndromed themselves to each other, and I'm like, all right, well done, not well done, but certainly done. It made sense. I still didn't like it.
Nope.
Me at Matthias, it made sense. I still didn't like it.
All right, so here's the big one. What plot twists were you surprised by, or on the other hand, what plot twists did you actually see coming?
My big ones. Did not expect the river to be part of the plan. Did not fucking expect that tank. Like, what? In all of my wildest imaginations of how they were going to get out of there, I never thought steal a tank was going to be on the list. And drown yourself with breathing underwater pills and get swept away by a river and hope you conveniently wash up in a good place to be picked up by said tank. I was just watching that happen and I was like, what the fuck? What the fuck? I feel like it's so difficult for me to actually like talk about this book because so much of this book was just me screaming into a hype cannon of being like, heist!
I went and looked up how old Leigh Bardugo was because I was figuring, okay, she has these ideas for the pills that allow you to breathe oxygen. Did she watch Marine Boy as a kid? Which would have been a few more years earlier than she was her childhood, but maybe she saw it on tape or something and got that idea, because that's the only time I've ever thought of something like that was from Marine Boy or ever heard of it. So that was just something my nerdy brain went back to my youth.
I'm trying to think. To me, it reminded me of like the Harry Potter, the gillyweed.
Gillyweed.
Yes.
But so yeah, it definitely brought a little bit of something back there. but really, like all fiction, pretty much all fiction is derivative from something, or some things, many things, whatever. So I think like I didn't necessarily put it together the first time, but the second time, this time around, reading the bit about, because they mentioned that stuff like earlier on, and it's like, how did I not put together that they're like giving everybody the stuff that makes you be able to essentially like breathe underwater? Like, how did I not put two and two together that they were clearly going to use some sort of like waterway to escape from?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that I really noticed this time was the flip-flop with with Kuei and Wylan when it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because before, I remember being like, what? And this time I was like, oh shit, this is what had happened. She wrote it in. See how he's not talking?
Mm-hmm.
See how the wrong one is there? And yeah. I was real excited by that. Also, God, that was just such a fucking Nina power move. Just full on being like, bitch, I'm a tailor now. I can do it all. Poor Nina. I just want to squish her cheeks and give her waffles and an appetite back. I just want her to be okay.
Oh, I want waffles now.
I mean, that too. I mean, I don't actively want waffles because I did just finish eating like 3 seconds ago on this webcast. Like,
yeah, we literally watched you do it.
It was really great. I hope y'all didn't receive cheering noises. And if you did, oops, too late. But I do spiritually want waffles because I think I always spiritually want waffles.
I haven't had waffles or pancakes in a year.
Damn. I had pancakes like a month ago, and it was the first time I had pancakes in like 4 years or so. And it was a religious experience. I definitely recommend it. Jonathan, you should treat yourself to some pancakes and or waffles and or both. You deserve it.
I also find it funny that they that Ketterdam is all about the waffles, because Amsterdam, which is what it's very obviously based on, is all about waffles.
No. Is it Amsterdam or Rotterdam?
Oh, I have actually never been to Amsterdam. I assumed to Rotterdam. I assumed it was Amsterdam because of like the whole like Red Lake District parallels and it's waffles in the book, but it's, in Amsterdam.
Yeah,
It's pancakes
Rotterdam
in
was
real
more
life.
the big industrial port city. So I don't know. I figured it was
would,
Holland somewhere, but I
yeah,
didn't.
I would
Yeah.
assume it was Amsterdam just because most people know of Amsterdam
Yeah.
versus like specific industrial ports of Holland knowledge that John just seems to be very savvy in. Nice. Mostly because I have never heard of Rotterdam, so I just was like, Ketterdam, Amsterdam, cool. Where's the weed? There is no weed. I am disappointed.
Why is there no weed? What the fuck?
Why is the weed always gone? It's me, man.
Yeah.
So other than all right, so any other plot twists that we were, I don't know, surprised by? Now, I mean, to be honest, like reading this the second time is a little bit hard to remember what I might not have been surprised by the first time, especially since I read this a few years ago originally. But I also, I mean, even this time around, it's like some things like the I don't remember what it's called, gillyweed type stuff. Like, it's like, how didn't I see that coming? But a lot of it, I still, it's all kind of, in a way, like a lot of it is nonsensical. Like, and clearly not even like Kaz had necessarily planned it. A lot of it just seems to conveniently work out.
Was it convenience or did he just control the universe?
But like, yeah, I mean, Nina dropping some Yurta was kind of like, I think that was a little bit easier to see coming. Like, to be honest, that might have been the one thing I actually wasn't all that surprised by the first time around, because the way they pushed it and the things it could do, it was like, how could they possibly make it out of here without her? Or like,
Yeah.
Eventually you learn that Jesper is also Grisha, but I mean, really, like, that's such a last minute thing that, for the longest time you think like, how can they make it out of there without her, falling prey to this? So,
although I did this time, like when I was reading it, the Jesper being Grisha just makes so much more sense. Cause like, he's a really good shot. Like, why are you so good at that? Like, stop. This doesn't make sense. Stop it.
But they explain that in the next book, though, and then you can be and you.
Yeah, no spoilers.
Well,
but no, I know exactly.
You don't have to be a Grisha to be a good marksman.
No, you don't have to be. But I mean, yeah, there's definitely things about Jesper that there were tiny hints, I guess, but I honestly think that it was hidden pretty darn well.
It was hidden well,
almost
but
too well.
It was hidden well, but it didn't feel like it wasn't planned. That's what I mean. Like, like it's one of those things that like sometimes like you get twists that come up and you're just like, where the fuck did that come from? Or sometimes you get twists that come up that are like, well, duh, that was going to happen the whole time. We knew that was coming. And then sometimes you get twists that come up that were like this and you were like, huh. And it isn't until you actually reread it that you're like, okay, no, wait, it was there. It really was there. Because the first time it like completely blindsided me and I was like, what? Also, yeah, no, the Nina thing though, like absolutely saw that coming the first time around, especially because of how much they emphasize that like Heartrenders are the most powerful on Param, and then it was like, huh, look how they conveniently have the most dangerous type on the drug with them while they're going to do drug-related business. Wonder what's gonna happen here.
Drug-related business.
Do you have any drug-related business to take care of, folks? I think the other thing that I really liked was, I sort of hinted on this last time, and that my favorite chapters of this section, and that's the Inedge chapter with the climb. Just like rereading it, I just remember reading it the first time and like literally holding my heart in my hands during that whole chapter.
Yeah. I mean, especially, they find out that incinerator was lit like more recently than they thought, and
Yeah, and like her shoes like melting as she's climbing, like literally it was like the best like
So
place of like reading anxiety for your characters, but also just short enough that I don't freak out too much, but like just long enough that I'm like,
did I miss where they were able to keep their shoes?
no, so they I can't remember exactly who it was. I don't think it was Jesper. It was Jesper? Wyland. It was Wyland.
Oh, they went and
Wyland.
recovered the shoes?
No, they didn't even go to recover them. They were in the laundry room because like the laundry was in the incinerator room because they burn everybody's crap that they wear or bring in with them. So Wyland, I mean, and that was definitely, plot convenience that Wyland found Inej's shoes. But like, also was it really because if the incinerator hadn't been lit as recently as it had been, she wasn't planning on having them. She wouldn't have needed them anyway. So it was really just kind of like building that extra, the incinerator being lit, but like obviously she can't climb that without some sort of shoes, and her shoes are better than
not if they're made of rubber and they're melting.
Well, yeah,
leather
that
would
was
have been a better move
weird
there
to me because they were rubber, right? And they were
yeah,
melting.
they were rubber.
Yeah.
But like maybe it's, I think the point is that her shoes, like there's something about like the soles of her shoes.
Yeah, they were climbing shoes. That.
I imagine those toe shoes. It's cursed and I hate it, but I can't.
Oh God, those shoes.
Have you ever worn climbing shoes? Have anyone rock climbed?
No,
no.
I mean, I've worn like Vibrams, which is what I picture her climbing shoes being.
That's what Nami was talking about.
Actual climbing shoes that people rock climb in are there's almost no. There's a lot of flexibility to them.
Yeah, that's what Vibrams are. So it's probably kind of similar.
They force your toes together so that they're the most uncomfortable things known to man, so that your toes are stronger because you have like 3 toes on top of each other. They're awful, but they work.
Now I feel like I have to go rock climbing between now and the next webcast so that I can talk about my rock climbing shoe feelings. I love that one of us has this experience though.
Yeah, I actually like doing it. I've only done it in indoor gyms, but it's quite fun.
Yeah, no, I've been rock climbing, but I haven't used any fancy special shoes for it. I just, go forth with determination and improper footwear.
Determination is really all you need for rock climbing.
Yeah. Improper footwear doesn't help, but if you got determination, you could probably do it.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. Oh, now I'm just thinking about how much I love Inej. Do you ever sometimes not think about how much you love Inej, and then you remember how much you love Inej, and you're just like, wow, I really love her. She's wonderful. I just wanna pinch her cheeks and keep her safe and stab Tante Helene for her.
Who gives her PTSD?
Yeah, and then protect her because she's my daughter and I love her. Am I old enough to be her mother? No, but it's fine. It's fine. I can still adopt her. She needs a mom. So do all of them. This is fine. Who let these children plan a heist? They have a bedtime.
Not in this world. They aren't really even children in this world. Like, there's comments about how young they are randomly, but like, if it weren't for those random comments by let's be real, old people like Jan Van Eyck, Wyland's father, like you forget how young they really are. But also that is kind of the type of people this world and apparently particularly Ketterdam breeds. So,
well, does anyone live past 30 in this world?
I mean, they do have magic healing. So.
Rich merchants.
There are a few, but it seems like
Pekka Rollins, and what's the guy who runs the Oh my gosh, so the guy who runs the dregs, I can't remember.
Yeah, but how
his
old
name.
is Pekka Rollins? Is he even old? Or is he just like
I
35?
think from Kaz's descriptions of him that he's like in his 40s is what I would guess.
Yeah.
Like that could be wrong. I guess we don't know. I'm sure that there
he's
is
older. We know he's older, but I never got a. I don't think they ever mentioned that he looked.
No, they never
old.
mentioned explicit ages for the older people. I think they pretty much specify that Van Eck is old enough that his new wife's age is disturbing.
Yeah, but okay, but that could be a 15-year age gap. I mean, Van Eck has a Weiland's what, 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there. I don't know if they've given his age or not.
I think he's like 15 or 16.
Yeah, he's
okay.
15 or
So
16.
Van Eck in this world could be realistically be as young as 35, 34.
Well, he could, but the way they describe him
He's a little older.
And the way they describe him, because Alice is older than Weiland, not by much, but by like a few years.
He's like 19 or 20.
Yeah, and I would guess he's at least twice her age. So he might not be super old, but like also the way they describe him, like that he's like, I think they say he's got like receding, like graying hair and everything. Like maybe I'm thinking of like dudes I know now, but like I know dudes who are 50 who don't look like that. So
right, exactly. And one of my best friends from college was completely gray at the age of 19.
Oh, my dad was bald at like 28.
Oh, this guy had a full head of hair. It was just gray at 19. Ironically, he still has a full head of hair, and it looks exactly the same.
But yeah, I mean, I obviously we're not meant to believe that people in this world, except for Bagra and the Darkling, live as long as they might in our world currently. But I think that
truly didn't see anything to say though that like unless people were very poor that they were dying young from disease and stuff. Because when you think about it logically, the reason we live the way we live to the ages that we live now is because we have access to reasonable medicine and stuff like that. And we're not just, dying of 30 of dysentery or whatever it happens to be, or dying in childbirth. But the fact that they have, Grisha healers leads me to believe that the lifetime in these novels are likely closer to normal people's than we expect, but also since so many of the people that we see, the characters are, characters in the army, characters actively in a war, characters who are very, very poor. I suspect that these are people who are, barely making it mid-20s anyway.
And realistically, if you go back to history, even prior to antibiotics, it was childbirth and dying before in infancy that skewed the results. People were living to 70, 80 since the 15, 16, 1700s.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at our founding fathers, a lot of them lived to.
I mean, in the end, like I don't think anybody's ages really matter that much. I do think that
just for the yuck factor.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's why I do think that Jan Van Eyck is older than like 35. Like I have to imagine he probably
like 50s or 60s.
Yeah, I would say at least 50s because like the yuck factor. Well, and also it's kind of funny that there's kind of a yuck factor when they talk about Weiland's dad and Alice, and like even saying she's like 20 and he's like 45 or 50, let's say 50, and like nobody has a problem with the Darkling and Alina though.
Well, remember Tara?
He looks young.
Ugly.
And maybe not ugly, but yeah, he's not super hot.
He's not super hot. It's okay.
He's Darkling.
But the Darkling looks young, and people don't know he's old, right?
Oh no, they know he's old. They don't know he's as old as he is.
I mean, but he's still solidly like an adult.
Yeah, I don't.
Not the way he was cast in the show that they're covering.
No, but I'm pretty sure they describe in the actual book that like the Darkling is like that, like he looks like he's in his late 20s or 30s.
Yeah, but they
never,
do know that he is
he doesn't
100 years old or something. They
no,
know that
no.
he. I thought they knew that he was
100.
old, just not like
120 is like what he tells Alina, but they still do know that he's like his public age is like somewhere in the 30s, I believe. His public age is like 25, 30. Because also think about it, like he can't just show up and be like, hey, I'm a kid, give me all this power. No way the king would have sat down with that. So he was probably presenting as an older-ish, not a young teenager gentleman for a while, just because it's easier to hold power versus an old king in situations like that. And also, they say that he physically looked like he's, like 18, 20, somewhere around there. But I do think there was a point where they say that he's like somewhere 30-ish. I don't know why I'm so stuck on 30 for his age, for his fake age. For his first fake age. Sorry, he has multiple fake ages. My bad. Really can't keep track with this man's bullshit. Just covered in it.
Well, so other than anyway, the last like discussion question I wanted to get to before we go over some like quotes was I did find this online, but Kaz's last line in a POV chapter of his is, I'm going to get my money and I'm going to get my girl. And the way this question was worded online was, did this feel like a natural culmination of his / there, as in the relationship between him and Enij's growth over the course of the narrative? It's not a stretch to say that their relationship transformed throughout this story, but did this last line feel in character for Kaz, or did it feel forced?
I think for me, there's one very important distinction here. It's that this line was like said in his head in his own personal narrative versus him saying it out loud. I think if he had said this out loud, like, no fucking way, absolutely not in character at all. But I think he's always been like, mentally possessive of Inej in his POVs anyway. And like, he doesn't, acknowledge his emotional connection to her or anything like that. But I think him being possessive enough to be like, this is like, she's my girl. Like she is a girl. She is mine. I think he's probably an idiot who doesn't realize that this is a very romantic thing to mentally say to himself. But like
I get the impression it's more of a sister. At least initially, he thinks it's more of a brother-sister relationship.
I don't think he ever sees brother-sister. I think he just sees resource, low-key, honestly. I think he sees resource, and then I think he sees confidant and trusted person. And because, especially when you think about Kaz, I would have to say the specific reason I don't see brother-sister is because he does have a brother. And he does have such a... And like... So like, he obviously does have like that sibling thing with somebody. And like, granted, brother's not around, but like that. And I don't know. I never... As somebody who has a sibling, it never read as sibling energy, like even when he was deluding himself. Because you can delude yourself into sibling energy, but like it didn't read that. Like I'd say sibling energy would be Jesper and Kaz, if anything. Because they read like brothers, except Jesper's an idiot who's pining. Oh, Jesper, stop pining, child. But yeah, no, if he had said this line out loud, I would have rioted. But the fact that it was in his head and he was like, yeah, we're gonna, like, she's mine. Gonna get her back. I was like, yeah, 99% idiot doesn't realize he's in love, but yes.
I agree with everything you said. I don't like the wording, even if it is in his head.
Yeah, the possession thing, my girl. And when I don't really think that it's meant as a possessive thing on Kaz's part, but it's just not in his character either for him to word it like that.
Yep, that's it.
Like I mean, and even after this, in the next book, like it becomes very clear. I almost feel like, and I could be wrong about this, but like if I was Leigh Bardugo, I would regret writing that line that way.
Sorry, say that again?
If I would, I obviously don't know how she feels or whatever, but like if I was Leigh Bardugo, I would regret writing that line that way. I'm going to get my girl. Like, because I really, like, despite Enid's, misgivings and stuff throughout this book and into the next, which we won't get into, I don't think Kaz feels like any sort of possessiveness over her. But also it just feels like this line was like pushed in there because like, oh, well, we gotta add that little oomph of like some sort of weird romance thing. Like it's just weird. It's not in character for him to say it that specific way.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, I think the sentiment is in character, but the phrasing is a bit lacking. Phrasing, yes. Yeah, no, especially because, like...
Are we not doing phrasing anymore?
No, we're still doing phrasing. Absolutely still... I mean, I'm still doing phrasing, but let's be fair. I don't think I'm a really good judge on what we're still doing because I still use the XD smiley face and put actions within the star, like the shift 8 stars, and be like 6 head out of quarter, like like chat with people. So like, who knows?
Is that not done anymore?
Apparently not. Somebody told me I dated myself on the internet, and I was like, "Who are you?" And they were like, "I'm a grown up. I'm 15," and I'm like, "Sit down, baby."
First of all, how dare they? Second of all,
as a child, Ariel should be allowed to do what she wants. Me, as an adult, sit down, child.
Exactly.
God.
All right. So, anything else to say about that specific line before we go on to a couple?
Yeah, no. The more I think about it, it definitely sounds like something that they were like, "We need an oomph line. This is our oomph line," and it's like, all right, well, technically in character, but very specifically phrasing.
Yeah, I mean, in character, and that he does absolutely care about Inez, but again, like I feel like the possession aspect of it is wrong, and I also like, I'm gonna get my girl. That's not.
It's not how he speaks.
No, it's not. Money. I'm gonna get my money. Yeah, I'm gonna get my girl. No, it should have been something like, I'm gonna get my money, and I'm going to, I don't know, literally like almost anything else. Rescue my friend, like.
Rescue my wraith.
Yeah. Like, maybe not wraith, because that makes it seem like he thinks of her only as a. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Well, no, he proves he's a great guy because he doesn't want to ghost his wraith.
Wow.
But
that was good. That was really good.
Maybe we should move on to quotes or something.
All right.
I just sink further into my pillows as this happens.
So I think this is something that I don't know if it's something, I can't remember if it's something Kaz specifically says to Inez, or if it's something that Inez just comes up with because of the way Kaz is with her. But the idea that better terrible truths than kind lies. I mean, that's a little rough, let's be real. But also this is a fantasy world, and it's a very hard fantasy world, Ketterdam especially. So yeah, any thoughts on terrible truths? Because I think there are there are ways to tell the truth without being like nasty and terrible about it. But also you can be as nice as possible, but the truth is still possibly going to hurt people. And would you rather that would you rather that somebody lie to you than tell you something you don't want to hear, no matter how nicely they do it?
Yeah, and also like the whole like white lies thing. And I think there's like a level of white lie that's like definitely like an acceptable white lie, and then there's levels of white lies where you're hiding like actual harm, and that's like, ooh. And it's just, oof. I'm somewhere in between. How about, why can't we, my response to this quote, yes, but can't we just have nice things?
Can't we just have kind truths?
Just kind truths, please. Kind truths, please. I would just like some. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Not always possible.
No,
Oh,
it's definitely not.
absolutely not. The world is a flaming dumpster fire.
All right. So, any other thoughts on terrible truths versus kind lies? It's not. I don't think it's something we need to discuss a lot. I think it's just it's an interesting quote that says a lot about this world and like our little group of friends, particularly Kaz and Inej. So.
Yep.
But the next part is Matthias, and you've seen what Yurtaperim can do, what Grisha can do in its grip. A gun is not evil, nor a blade. Yurtaperim ensures obedience. It makes Grisha what they were. It makes Grisha what they were always meant to be. A second army, Matthias asked, his voice thick with scorn. An army is made of soldiers. These creatures were born to be weapons. They were born to serve the soldiers of Gel. So it's Matthias and Jarl Brum, this is it. Before this, Matthias was already questioning, obviously everything about what he learned and done, but this is very much like it's very much that like guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Yep.
Thought process that is not incorrect, but also dangerous in a way. So.
Right.
So yeah, and the idea of them, them being literally used as human weapons, slaves, is.
Yeah, I think this quote like rubs me the wrong way on so many levels, and I think the very first level is like the guns don't kill people, people kill people, and it's like, but guns make it easier. But then also the level of in a fantasy world, just because people are born with abilities doesn't make them like doesn't make them automatically a weapon, and like that whole idea is just like absurd to me, and I hate all of it. All of it makes me angry and grumpy and sad, and I can't accurately express with my human words what I mean. But it's just like the idea that like you consider a person a weapon. I'm just like distress noises. That was really helpful. I'm really good at words today, guys. It's been a day.
It's been it's been like a month. It's been a year.
Yeah. It's been a fucking year.
We're not all good with words these days. So yeah, I kept coming, like reading this quote, I really kept coming back to the whole idea of like guns don't kill people, people kill people. But in this case, they're literally saying that the people are the weapons, the guns, and they're using them to kill other people. So
yeah, and I think the other thing that like like the Jurta ensures obedience, and like it's
not obedience, it's slavery. There's a difference.
Exactly, and it's like in a way though, like is it like ensuring obedience is just code for slavery? It's slavery with icing on it and a smiley face to be like it's
slavery via drugs instead of via fear.
Exactly, and it's like it's just like it's so. There are so many things wrong with this like route of thinking that I can't even begin to parse where I start to get angry, because the whole thing just makes me angry. And I just wish to take Jarl Blum and like shake him a lot.
Jarl, whatever the fuck his name is, nobody cares. He's the worst.
I wish to take Nazi leader McDickface, shake him aggressively, kick him in the dick, and then put him in a prison forever.
But stepping back, is that much different than what the upper classes of history have always treated the lower classes of as just their cannon fodder?
I mean, no, but
so how different is this?
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter that it's different. Like, it is exactly the same thing. Still hate it there.
I know, but I just
I mean, I see you trying to be like analysis and deep, and I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I'm mad.
But still no.
well, I just look at him as, yes, it's terrible, but is it any more terrible than lots of these different generals of fantasy novels that have thrown their cannon fire to the wolves that we've cheered for thousands of books? I don't know.
Well, I think that. Well, I mean, do you really
Also, I
cheer
would like
for
to
them?
say-
I mean,
I
I don't
would like
really
to cheer for them.
cheer for.
You cheered for Rob, right?
No, I did not cheer for Rob. I
Really?
sat Rob down and was like, idiot child, do you see how many people you're murdering? But I guess
Yeah,
I'm
man,
also,
like just give it up. Like just
I am
settle
also-
down in the north and deal with your life.
I'm also very much like an anti-war person in real life.
Same.
So the
Well,
idea
that
of
make-
cheering for
that makes perfect sense.
yeah,
Which is-
well, Jonathan's like, all these dots are connecting about your personality right now. I get it. Like, to me, the idea of cheering for even a good character that leads characters into war, I'm like, hey, do you see how wasteful this is? Maybe let's not waste human lives on the conflicts of the rich.
Well, I mean, and even setting like that aside, like, granted, not that, you know, the like essentially like serfs in like Song of Ice and Fire or in the effing real world had much of a chance. Like they had to come up and fight, or else they would be, you know, I mean, they were conscripted, and if they ran away, they were deserters essentially. And that we've had that happen in this country too, in very modern times, which is disgusting. But you know, like in this sense, there's the idea of them literally drugging these people into submission adds that extra oomph to it, because while it's wrong either way, these, you know, these Grisha, like, again, once they get this drug, it is like, I mean, it's literally, I would say it's like closest to heroin in terms of how addictive it is, and how quickly it becomes addictive, how much it ruins that life, and how they will do literally anything. They forget who they are as a person. Like, here's another movie reference. Have you ever seen Train Spotting?
Yes.
Because that movie is fucked up.
Yes, it is.
And
Not
like,
a redeeming character in it.
No, and you know, like, but so imagine if those people were doing the things that they were doing because they were forced to, you know, like it's just it's very dark, honestly. Like not that there wasn't there weren't dark moments in this book otherwise, or in the original trilogy, but like the Yurta thing, it is very dark. Also not just what, you know, the Theardens want to use it for. The whole idea of it is because especially because we have never once before Nina seen a Grisha take it by choice. So we've only seen Grisha like in prison having it forced on them, or as you know, as indentured servants, aka slaves, in Kettering, having it enforced, you know, forced on them. So it's a very, very, you know, dark thing to force someone into an addiction like that. Like, addiction is bad enough on its own. You know, we see it with Jesper, where somebody is prone to it. But it, you know, like, I mean, with Nina, we see it like firsthand. Like, this is a character that never would have done this by choice. I mean, and I think it just cements the fact, you know, that all these other Grisha wouldn't have done it by choice either.
It really cements the sacrifice that she makes.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's like, because like you think about it and you're like, damn, like, Nina, that's so awesome. Like, you really care about your friends. But then you think about it and you're like, damn, because it really was the ultimate sacrifice to her, because it literally was voluntarily shooting herself up with heroin. Like, that's what it was. It was shooting herself up for heroin to save her friends. I would say it's a step further.
from the description, it's far worse than heroin.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
heroin is
you have
highly
a real life.
addictive, but if you shoot up once, the odds of you being hooked forever are not that high, assuming you get proper treatment. The others, the way this was described, it's like it's a once and you're just never again.
I should also clarify that I'm very scared of drugs, especially heroin, and to me, it's one and done. And that is
Well, you're looking at someone who's never had any drugs other than aspirin, basically. So I've
no,
never had an illegal substance, or even legal substances to excess. So
yeah. No, low-key me looking at heroin facts, I'm like, I don't know, one and done, I think. I don't know. Heroin bad. I'm so good at words. But yeah, no, oh my god, like the whole like just like the different levels of like how like your Perem literally brings together like the slavery and the aspect of the story, and then the addiction aspect of the story. And it's like, bam, have super addiction slavery. And
yeah, it is definitely like, there's a lot of good parallels there to like how Jesper is and whatever. Which, you know, I can't wait. I really can't wait, you know, to get into Crooked Kingdom next month. I'm
so excited for
so many things come to a head.
And just so many things are about to happen, and I'm hyped. But also, it's sometimes I think about the emotional trauma that Yurda Perem put me through, and I'm like, why would you do this? Please put this away. I do not want refund.
Well, and speaking of trauma, we don't have to go into depth on this because we've already talked about Matthias quite a bit, but his line, the life you live, the hate you feel, it's poison, I can drink it no longer. That honestly, that line was what it's like. Yes, he's still not, you know, he's still very problematic. He's not even a problematic fave. He's not a fave. He's problematic. But that moment where somebody who has been indoctrinated the way he has been can, you know, just look at something and say, this is poison and I refuse is it is still, there's still a lot of, you know, change and growth that needs to happen. But I like that line, and I like everything that it stands for.
Yeah,
it does, but it still to me was more of a, I was a soldier, I was a good soldier. There are rules to war, and you just cross them. How I viewed him on that. That he's you know, you reach to the point where now they want us to become war criminals, and that makes us worse than them. Even, you know, because when you're fighting, you know, that's how I viewed that line. That he didn't want to cross into being a war criminal.
Damn it, I was like 3 seconds away from being like, I like this line. Maybe like 0.3% less suckage for Matthias. But nope, I'm back to it. You're right.
I guess I misinterpreted that because I actually thought that, I didn't really think that was the moment he came to that decision. Like, I'd never actually, I know that he had moments where he was angry with Nina and everything, but I never actually thought he was going to allow Jarl Brum to, you know.
I truly didn't know.
I really didn't. Well, okay. The first time I read this, I might have, but like the second time I read this, there were so many signs that.
Yeah, I mean,
I've only read it the once, so that's just how I read it. It's okay, now we're.
I think there were a lot of signs. If you ask me, like, and this is again my opinion, but I think there were a lot of signs that he wasn't just going to, you know, give her over to Jarl Brum.
I think
no matter who he was to him.
I think I just had so much fear for Nina and so much doubt of Matthias that I couldn't even read that subtext in the text if it was there. AKA, if you saw it, I'm pretty sure it was there, but I personally could not
Yeah,
even.
I missed it.
Again, Jonathan, though, it's also your first read. And the first read, I was sitting there fucking terrified, convinced that he was gonna shoot Nina and be like, all right, we done. Bye, witch. And second read, I was still terrified for her because I still, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I do not trust Matthias. And I do not like him.
Yeah, and I keep waiting for, maybe I shouldn't be because it's young adult, and maybe some of these young adult novels are more adult than others, but I kept expecting at least one of the protagonists to be killed.
Well, we do end with one of the protagonists being
almost killed.
Almost killed, right?
And
Wait,
then
he got shot. That's
another one is captured at the end, but
Right.
also this is a duology. So...
I know, but I mean, as I said, there's plenty of books where characters get killed along the way. So I thought, it's very possible that Nina's the sacrifice and he's the betrayer, and that becomes a plot line going forward. So, and then I
decided that Jonathan just knows too much about fantasy lore and writing tropes.
He really does.
He just knows all the thing and sees all of it. He's like, oh wait, this is YA. Never mind.
Well, and also we're like
Nami's
like angry youth, and I'm angry like nearly middle-aged person, and Nick is over here just trying to be kind, and Jonathan's like, well, what about the analytical side of things?
and Nami's like, but consider rage.
Oh God,
Jonathan, you're too wise for
I mean, like the Hunger Games had, and granted it was the third book where it happened, but like Finnick Adair got killed. I mean, people died in that.
Finnick did die, didn't he? Oh,
he did.
Her sister
Got eaten by those animals.
No.
And he left his pregnant wife behind because plot.
Oh my God, yeah.
Or because he was. I mean, he was fridged, but like not in like the. Usually, you only use fridge in a. You only use the term fridged when it's like.
Yeah, I mean, so there were characters that I considered protagonists that did die in that series. So. So I expected it could happen in this one too.
Jonathan was just waiting for a murder, and he was not given a murder. And
we still have a whole other book. You might get some murders.
I might.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, like let's understand in the Grishaverse, like characters died, but none of them were like. It wasn't Alina. It wasn't Mal. It wasn't.
They've had main character armor.
Zoya. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't even Tomar or what's.
Talia. All right. So last but not least, quote wise, and this kind of also harkens back to. It's another fucking Matthias quote. I don't even know why. Like, but he has the best lines in this.
He has good lines, but I still want to stab him.
We can still hate him.
Yeah.
They fear you as I once feared you, as you once feared me. We're all someone's monster, Nina.
Oh, we're all
someone's actively committed a lot of murder.
I mean, yeah, obviously, like Matthias, actual kind of monster. But again, like Grisha, and here's the thing. Again, this goes into that doctrination thing that the Grisha are the Fjordan's monsters, and because yes, sometimes they have done things that were bad. I guess like we don't know why they murdered Matthias's. I can't remember if it was just his family or his whole village, or if that whole thing might have been staged and with somebody else. All we know is that.
Who cares?
Yeah, I mean,
big mood.
It's war, man. But I mean, I like this quote because, like, in real life, it's actually true. Like, you could be the nicest effing person in the world, and like, you still are probably gonna break someone's heart someday. Like you're still gonna hurt somebody someday. You're still gonna be like you're gonna be that person who ended what you thought was a lifetime best friendship in high school because the other person wasn't cool enough, and you become that ex-friend's monster. Or you're going to be the bully who bullies somebody and you're that person's monster, or you're going to
I try not to
be.
actively think about it because it causes me a lot of distress because I was very mean.
I know we've talked about that.
You were the bully, Tommy?
Yeah, Nami was a bully.
Well, see, I was in a weird place of being the bully, but also being bullied by separate groups of people, but also being an oblivious idiot who neither realized she was being bullied or also realized that she was doing the bullying, and I just existed in a weird bubble of and then me 5 years later being like, oh shit, you said some real fucked up shit. And then me 2 years after that being like, oh shit, they said some real fucked up shit to you. And then me another 2 years after that being like, trauma? Is this you? And yeah, that's my summary of high school.
Is that you?
Wasn't that a great summary?
It was. You took us on a whole journey.
There was a big journey there. It's okay. We're healing and not being mean to people now.
Yes, hashtag we love growth in this house.
Now, did you ever befriend your bullies?
I thought they were my friends because I was an idiot.
Oh,
It was that kind of a bully
so
situation.
my bullies I didn't like at all and knew they were the enemy. And then when Facebook first came out, this is actually a sad story. So when Facebook first came out, one of the first people who friended me was one of my bullies. And I was like, what the hell would I accept his friendship for on Facebook? I hated him. He hated me. What the hell? But I looked at his profile because I was curious. And he had all these interests like comics and Battlestar Galactica that I shared. So I was like, okay, it's 20 years later. I'll bite. I'll reach out to him. And I said, Ernie, got your friend request. Saw that we have a lot in common. Were you always interested in this stuff? Or is this something you came to later in life? And he cut Zach and he goes, John, I owe you and your friends a huge apology. I was always into this stuff and was jealous of you guys, but I wanted to be cool and get girls, and you were getting no girls. So I was with this other group and behaved like an ass. So we became friendly on Facebook and would chat all the time about Battlestar Galactica, which Dean would appreciate, Tara. And then shortly thereafter, he got meningitis and died.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow, that
I said this is like a hard, but people do change, or people were often bullies because of their own lack of self-confidence, which I think is what I learned from that he was bullying us because of his own lack of self-esteem and trust that he could enjoy what he enjoyed because it wasn't perceived to be cool.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. And, as somebody who's been there and done that, because most of my bullying was unfortunately, directed at the openly gay people in my high school. And I realized that was a lot of internalized homophobia there. But, another thing is that
I had a friend like that.
I don't expect them to forgive me. And if given the opportunity, I would offer my forgiveness, but they are entitled to hate me for the rest of their life. And that is absolutely fine. And I have, previously received apologies from people like this who have bullied me for, being a nerd and being brown. And I've been like, acknowledge your apology, but like, I'm not going to forgive you because
Well, and I think that's the thing. We can always
that.
Acknowledge somebody's apology. It is good character growth to acknowledge somebody's apology. Don't necessarily have to do it, but it is good character growth to acknowledge to an extent. There's like, listen, like if the guy who I was in a relationship with for a year who cheated on me 12 times apologized to me, I'd be like, ha, ha, fuck you. But like there is a level where like acknowledging somebody's apology is character growth on your part as well. But that does not mean that you have to accept like anything. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that you have to accept what they did to you and let go of it. It doesn't mean that you have to forgive. I really hate that whole like idea that like we all should forgive and forget. Fuck that. No.
Because, I agree that absolutely. Like,
because to be honest, if we all forgave and forgot, then like there would be a lot of shitty people in this world who never got any like comeuppance or learned anything.
And like, granted, we don't exist to make sure that shitty people get their due, but we also don't exist to let shitty people walk all over you, or even to let good people accidentally be bad to you. Like, and I think I will say, Jonathan, I wish I had the ability to do that. Sometimes there are good people who I have pushed out of my life because they were previously bad to me, and I cannot bear to deal with them anymore, even though we could be the best of friends. And I think it's amazing that you were able to find that forgiveness and do that. But I also think that that forgiveness is not required.
I hear you, but I also am, I guess, maybe again because of the era I grew up, quite honestly, like today's cancel culture, if I don't know a single person who could pass muster with today's rules. If you go back to how we behaved in the 80s, there's no one who hasn't thrown bricks through glass windows.
Well, but I think that's the other thing. I think so many people who dislike cancel culture misinterpret what it actually is. It says that if you do bad things and do not acknowledge that those things are bad and do not make an effort to correct those things, that you are canceled. Now, it does not say that if you have done a bad thing ever, you are canceled. What it says is if you have done a bad thing and you have not acknowledged that it was bad and you have not made the steps to like correct it, that's not okay. So, for example, if I actively was that Regina George bitch in high school and bullied people and sat here and was like, fuck yeah, I was right to bully those people. I still do. Cancel me by all means. But, sitting and being like, yes, I did bad things. This is why they were bad and I'm growing. Not a bad thing. To this day, we're all still growing as people, and being a human is a part of like actively unlearning the bad things that you know, or actively learning, unlearning terrible things, etc. But it doesn't mean that you can be a person and do a bad thing and never recover because of cancel culture. But what it does mean is that when people here's my best example, right? So thinking about cancel culture YouTube, I don't know if you'd be really savvy with this, Jonathan, but there is, Jenna Marbles, the really famous YouTuber who makes a lot of like dumb joke videos, and in the past has literally made like very accidentally, blatantly racist stuff. She has done, like slut shamey videos, stuff like that. She came on YouTube a few months ago and she was like, guys, I realized that shit was fucked up. I removed these videos. Like, that was wrong of me. I'm sorry. That's, holding yourself accountable. And people are like, cancel culture ruined her. And I'm like, no, cancel culture let her see that what she did was wrong and she apologized and she's growing as a person. Now, another example, unfortunately, is Jeffree Star, who has continued to be racist, a terrible person publicly, and has never actually apologized for it. So when people
I was at the bar with Dean's kid last weekend, and we were like walking by, and he wanted black lipstick, and the only true black lipstick there was Kat Von D, and I was like, we don't buy Kat Von D.
Yeah,
we don't buy Kat Von D.
And so, for example,
why do we not buy Kat Von D?
Because he's an anti-vaxxer, anti-Semite.
She is?
Kat Von D is an anti-vaxxer and anti-Semite.
She is an anti-vaxxer, anti-Semite, and has never once apologized for anything that. I think she tried to take back the anti-vax thing, but
and whenever people sort of doubled down on her and they were like, hey, this is wrong, she was like, no, this is my view. It's okay. And see, that's why you get canceled. Because when somebody's like, hey, this is wrong, and you sit down and you're like, no, this is my view, it's okay, that's not correct.
What do you do with, we're now totally off topic. What do you do with a guy like Don Rickles, who is just a total serial offender of every ethnic group, but that's his total shtick? And quite honestly, I found it hilarious when I was growing up. I still find it funny. And he certainly would insult my ethnicity as much as everyone else's ethnicity. And so and it's a comedy routine. So I expect totally different standards in comedy than I do in politics.
Comedy is often offensive. I don't know. I think cancel culture is such a really difficult thing to talk about, because I do think that sometimes every once in a very great while it goes too far.
Yes.
Because there are people who have tried to walk it back and be like, dude, I said that 10 years ago. I didn't even remember I said that. I'm sorry. And it's but because you are such a big persona, it becomes like a thing that you
Yeah, a
can't
thing
get
that comes to
beyond.
mind with something like that is like there was a whole scandal with like that person who made that animated series with like the weird hell thing, and God, I don't even remember what this thing is called. Somebody probably knows what this is. I can literally picture it in my head. The main character's name is like Angel Dust or something, and
Yeah, it's like hotel something.
yeah, it's hotel something, hotel, and it's like a hotel to rehabilitate demons in hell. And basically it's like this animated series, and like there was like a scandal where it came out that the author used to write like racy fanfic with minors like years ago, and everybody was like, oh my God, cancel. And she was like, also, like, I was a minor when I wrote this. So first of all, that, second of all, lots of other stuff. But it was like, it's one of those things that, like, cancel culture can always go too far, but I think cancel culture as a thing is really important for holding people accountable. And like, just
I
like
think the idea of it being called cancel culture is like
exactly
kind of immediately problematic.
I think my biggest problem is that people who are getting targeted by things that are telling them to be better and be good and automatically being like, oh, you're going too far. It's like, well, anything can go too far. But this is literally a thing that's trying to hold you accountable for making mistakes. And sometimes people dig into mistakes too far in the past to even reasonably ask you to do a thing about them, which is absurd and ridiculous. Of course that's absurd and ridiculous. Anybody with a brain can see that that's absurd and ridiculous. But like, also, like, I think we do need to call out people who are actively being not good right now.
So on a totally serious, again, I guess I know they're going after politicians for they dressed in blackface in college during a Halloween costume or something. And look, I don't know a single person who's male other than myself, ironically, who didn't dress in blackface as Mr. T for the A-Team. That was a thing that pretty much every 8th grader did. And
it's also different if you're in 8th grade than versus if you're in college.
Yeah.
But it also, like, so I think at its core, Nami's point is it is not a bad thing to hold people accountable for things that they did previously in their life. We should hold ourselves accountable for things that we did previously in our lives. And we should then try to be better
about it. But as I say, the times were different, the expectations were different, the reality and what was considered acceptable was different. And to go
that doesn't mean they shouldn't be held accountable for it.
I disagree, because you wouldn't. Again, the standards are completely different.
It's too dangerous of a precedent to set. If you say you have to use the standards of that time versus the standards of what we think is acceptable, and you keep going back, if you go back to the civil rights era, there's too much there that you can't ever say, oh, well, it was acceptable because at the time that was okay.
And I think another thing that you're saying here, Jonathan, is once again, this goes back to the learning point. So I think this applies very well to, people in, your age group and people who are older and all of that. Like, yes, back then, things that were acceptable are explicitly unacceptable now. So for example, being in 8th grade and doing blackface for a costume, that would have seemed okay. Obviously, if you lived in a culture where people would have told you that was wrong, well, that wouldn't have been an issue, but that culture wasn't there back then. But the thing is, the culture exists now. And as a person existing now, a part of your responsibility is to look at that culture and be like, oh, okay, yeah, so that was wrong. Even though it was okay back then, it was still wrong. Let's not do that again now that we know that that's wrong. It's not, you can look at something in the lens.
I could say to now that it's wrong, no, yes, but I draw the line saying it was wrong necessarily at the time. Because again,
something that is wrong is always wrong. Black is always wrong.
Because our standards change.
But so here's
what is wrong today was not necessarily wrong 50 years ago, and vice versa.
Morality and being good does not change. The societal standards of acceptance change, acceptance for
Okay,
regard
example of the other way. We have cursed horrifically on this podcast by the standards of 1975. Today, no one blinks an eye at the F-bombs. That's the opposite, okay? Look, I have always talked like a sailor, so I'm not a good example. But, saying the F-bomb in 1980 would have been such a no-no. Unless you lived in New York.
But that's not not comparable. It's just not the same thing.
Well, I think it is quite comparable. It's changing the morality and changing standards, and it's always changed.
Well, okay.
So evolved.
Standards. I think, Jonathan, the problem that's happening here is that we are mixing up morality with standards. Let's be, just as a face value, like cursing is probably not like spiritually good. It's probably not a moral thing if you truly believe that curse words are that evil. And yeah, so morally, those moral standards regarding curse words have dropped. The current societal standards, but the morality of cursing, nobody sitting here cursing today has been like, yes, cursing is good. Cursing is a moral obligation or something like that. What I am saying is, for example, how women were treated in the 50s. It has always been morally wrong for women to be treated as they were in the 50s. However, that at the time was the societal standard for how women were to be treated. Therefore, it was normal. What is normal or the standard never equals morality. And you can live in an immoral time and you can live with an immoral standard and still see that that's wrong. However, not finished yet. This is the important bit, which is why I cut you off, Jonathan. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
The important thing is that just because you do not at the time recognize that a standard is immoral does not make you an immoral person. What makes you an immoral person is looking at an immoral standard and continuing to follow it after someone tells you that it's bad.
Yeah, no, so, that I get.
So
and I understand like the whole, but again, going and trying to cancel out history or cancel out
old canceling history.
No. I'm gonna say
cancel culture is.
I beg to differ because like they have taken television series off the air because they are no longer politically acceptable.
But you know what they have also done? They have taken, like Disney's Fantasia or whatever it was that had that scene.
Song in the South, which is the most atrocious and racist of all the Disney films.
Yeah,
and maybe one of the most racist of any film I've ever seen is the extreme example. But something that we, and I put this together, we love because it's our culture. The Drow episode of Community, which is now off the air.
And listen, here's the thing, though. You are confusing what people want to morally cancel as people showboating and pretending that they're about canceling. And they're about holding things accountable. Holding things accountable does not mean erasing the past. Holding things accountable means looking at the past saying, this is what we did. At this time, it was okay, but it was never morally okay just because we did it. That is not what cancel culture is. We're not erasing the past. Cancel culture in its purest, in what it should be, because let's be real, it also isn't this, but in what it should be, and the reason we shouldn't dislike the core of cancel culture, which is, and I hate saying cancel culture because it just has such negative connotations, as you've shown, Jonathan, but the core of what this is holding people accountable for being terrible. And a part of that is, Disney putting warnings on old movies that have racist imagery and being like, hey, these were the views at the time. Yeah. We have kept this because this is what was real and this is what it was. But you should know that these are not views that are acceptable now. And that is what we want. What we don't.
That is what we want, but that's not what. But that's not always we're getting. We're just pulling these episodes because we don't think that they should be watched anymore.
People love showboating, and that's a very important thing of this. When you think about showboating in terms of actually making moral change in the world, a good example from this year, in fact, is the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And when instead of like doing political change, people painted Black Lives Matter on streets. It's like cool showboating about Black Lives Matter, but that's not what
doesn't have
matters.
any real impact, right?
We don't want the showboating. We want the actual impact. We want political change. I don't care if you take out that episode where somebody blackface. Blackface exists. We can't pretend it didn't exist. Keep that community black drow episode because we see why it's problematic. And, you know, maybe put a little warning in there that says, hey guys, like maybe don't do this because it ain't cool. Don't pretend you didn't blackface in cosplay if you did it years ago. Don't pretend that you always were against it. Because, for example, blackface in cosplay, way back when it first became an issue, when that Michonne cosplayer who showed up who did blackface, I was like, I don't get why this sucks. I don't get it. A year later, I was like, oh my God, I see why this sucks.
But that's like my point. When they did it, no one thought anything of it.
But see, here's the thing. People did think something of it.
What?
People thought something of it then, and they called her out for doing it, and she doubled down and said that she was okay.
Also, none of us are black. The people who are experiencing harm from the blackface are people who are black. And that's what's being erased here, and that's what I really have a problem with, Jonathan, is that you're saying, oh, well, it was okay at the time. No, it wasn't. Not to the people who were actually being harmed by it. By the people who normalized society, sure, it wasn't that big of a deal that kids were dressing up like Mr. T and using blackface. It was still harming. It was still a problem.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know if Jonathan was actually saying it was like okay. It was in the general view of society, it was like people just didn't think about that.
That's right. They did. There was no.
Yeah, like it wasn't that it was ever okay. Like it wasn't that it was ever okay. Like,
it was the standard.
And I think that's kind of the point.
No one thought about it. No one was called out on it at the time. Or if they were, we didn't have the internet, so it was called out on it in one small area, so you never heard about it, which might have actually been happening. I mean, the internet has changed everything, quite honestly. I mean, I could not believe when my daughter was in college what people were posting on different sites that I'm like, oh my God, they'll never get a job if this ever shows up. I mean, which is another unfortunate reality, right? If people are judging you based on your worst moments of social media, and I don't think that's fair. And
I mean,
I understand totally what you're saying, Nick. I get it. I'm not African American. I will never be African American. I will never understand what they go through. I quite honestly, despite the fact I'm half Jewish, don't understand anti-Semitism because I've never experienced a minute of it in my life. Okay, I have other friends who insist my whole high school was anti-Semitic. I go, I never saw it, or maybe I'm just oblivious to it. I don't know. They insist there was all sorts of anti-Semitism in the high school I went to. I never saw it in my life.
You're probably oblivious to it.
That doesn't mean it didn't. I was going to say that didn't mean it doesn't exist. And I know anti-Semitism certainly exists. I see it elsewhere. I've just personally never experienced on a personal level, and that's different than not seeing it when some idiot politician goes off on an anti-Semitic rave.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of things as a woman. I can promise you, I know other women experience that I've certainly never experienced.
Exactly, and that's sort of my point. So you what you experience.
It's different. Yeah, it's different like, on a personal level for sure. And we've gone off on like such a tangent. Like,
sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think the point here is like I don't think Jonathan was ever saying blackface was right. He was saying that like society at that time didn't frown on it, and so like these kids didn't think about it. And I can almost guarantee you that
30 years later,
at least some of those kids that did it are like, wow, what the hell was I doing? You know?
And an equal number, and probably some of them also were the racist bastards we think they are. So.
I think the whole thing that it comes down to is that, you know, the reason people get so angry at something like cancel culture is because whenever you do something good aggressively, sometimes people who shouldn't be targeted in it get targeted. For example, Jenna Marbles, who ended up quitting YouTube because she like felt so guilty about the mistakes that she made in the past. That shouldn't have happened. She shouldn't have had to quit. I wish she didn't feel that need. But, you know, I think the essence of why people are being canceled is that you can fuck up all you want in the past. Obviously, standards were different. And if moral standards that you grew up with said that this was okay at the time and you did it, that makes sense. What doesn't make sense is existing now when moral standards have loudly said that those things are no longer okay, and doubling down and being like, oh, but it was okay, so it's still okay now. And I think that is the big distinction, because, you know, like when you think about all those people back then who did blackface and didn't think anything of it, and you think about them now, I would hope that the people who are still morally good will be able to sit down and say, yeah, that was not correct. We shouldn't have done that. Unfortunately, it is what it is. We shouldn't have done that. We won't do that now. And
I think everyone, I think 95% of people do.
I think you are very. I think you have a very polite and kind view of humanity.
What?
Most of the people who have been called out about this don't apologize.
Because they still do they not apologize, or their apologize is not good enough? I mean,
they're not apologizing.
No, yeah, there's a lot of.
So I can't remember. I can't remember. Did Al Franken apologize for his?
I don't know who that is.
Really.
I can't remember if he did or not. I thought he was sort of forced out before he even had a chance to.
Well, he was also forced out because of things that he did to women. So,
right. I'm just saying, but it was but he was a comedian. The thing they nailed him for was he had this comedic shot of his hands on the woman's breasts from a picture when he was doing USO shows. That's what got him in trouble.
He was forced out for, to my memory.
That is what he was forced out for.
Okay. Well,
and that's still not good. That's real fucking good.
It isn't. But again, I thought he did, and they still didn't care. But
did he actually?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I feel like there's a level of like some things are like apology worthy, and some things are like you can apologize.
But again, this is where I said comedians, at least for me, and this is again, maybe it's totally wrong on my part. I have a whole different standard of what a comedian can get away with, and what I actually want him to be able to get away with, than I do a school teacher, a politician, someone in the business world.
Well, yes,
it's a different.
But you still do have a standard, yes. And if a comedian,
my standards as comedians is pretty. You got to really go overboard.
Oh no, I feel that. I too am the same way about comedy. Obviously, I have my ideals that comedy should always joke up versus joking down, aka joke at those more privileged than you instead of putting down those with jokes that are less privileged. But obviously that's ideal, and that's not a real thing. And I enjoy comedy that doesn't do that, and I consume comedy that doesn't do that. But once again, I still am aware that that's not morally great. And if anybody expressed those sort of views that they say in jokes to me as a real view, I would be really, really upset. And once again, this is just also a personal flaw because, ideally, we wouldn't let go of these things in comedy, but we do.
Go ahead, Nick.
Nick has a serious hand.
I've got a lot to say, so I apologize.
Be my guest. I've already stuck my foot in my mouth many times.
Franken's fall was not because of a picture. It was because he was accused of forcing himself and forcing unwanted kisses on a specific woman, and then multiple women came out afterwards.
Okay, is that what it was? Okay. I just remember the picture. So
that was not why he was canceled.
Okay.
Secondly, the thing that I have a real problem with is ever going back and trying to contextualize something as, well, it was okay because of the time period. I think it's very difficult, even if that's true, right? Like let's assume at the time period it was okay on some level to wear blackface. It wasn't, but let's pretend that it was. What Nami is saying, and that I completely agree with, is if that is no longer acceptable, you should say, hey, at that time, this was, what I was feeling. This is not okay. And I wish that had never happened. And I formally denounce that ever being okay. And I want to eradicate that.
Yeah.
And I never okay to apologize in a way that says, well, but it was okay at the time, so it's fine.
Yeah, no, I hear
rape
you.
culture. Rape culture is a whole totally.
Yeah.
I
feel so strongly about this, John, is because a lot of this dialogue of it was okay at the time is directly correlated to how women have been historically treated and how women are treated now and how it's still not okay. And obviously, like, big pause here, I know you mean none of that.
Yes,
but I know you absolutely would never mean that at all. Like, I know you, John, and I love you to pieces. And the reason I continue to have this conversation with you is because I love you to pieces. But the reason that it was okay at the time idea is so difficult to parse is because historically people have been treated like shit.
Oh, I mean,
like, you know, and when you say it was okay at that time, like, you can basically excuse anything by saying it was okay at that time.
Yeah.
And just because you live
that's not
you're okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's taken to the extreme backward.
But the extreme backward is sometimes how you need to look at this, you know? And it sucks to have to look at things in extremes. But the truth of the matter is that when genuinely bad people have been called out on a lot of this stuff, they have doubled down and continued to do their bad stuff. Or they have made flimsy apologies that don't actually acknowledge the bad that they did. For example, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but the apologies that strike me the most are, you know, I don't know how in touch you are with the cosplay community and people doing blackface within the cosplay community, but the thing that strikes me a lot is that the people who do this normally sit down and they're like, oh, it's not an issue in my country. Oh, I didn't mean it to be bad. The problem is, it is bad. It does hurt people. You have hurt people. Please stop. And they double down and they say, oh, but I didn't mean to, so I can keep doing it. That's not okay. That's why people get canceled. When you commit hurt in the present and you are told that you committed that hurt in the present and you continue to commit hurt, then you are canceled. Now, if you have committed hurt in the past and it was a long time ago and you're not like that, and somebody is like, oh my God, you did that. That was really fucked up. Any reasonable person would be like, oh yeah, shit, that was real bad. I should not have done that. It was messed up, you know? But the problem comes in when unreasonable people who have done that are like, well, that's what it was back then. And they use that as an excuse to be like, so I should be given a pass for not firmly condemning it now. And that is the problem. It is the lack of firm condemnation of things that were previously an okay standard that were not actually morally okay. And that is the reason that saying that things were different in the past, therefore nobody can stand up to muster, is also inherently false. Because standing up to muster does not mean you never did bad things that were okay by the standards of the world. What it means is that when those world standards change, you sit down, you look at those past hurts and you say, okay, that wasn't great. Shouldn't have done that. You know, when I was in high school, late 2000s, homophobia was pretty rampant among teenagers. We talked about it all the time. We were very loud about it. We didn't even realize it was an issue. Maybe in more liberal places it was, but I grew up in a very Republican town without even knowing it. Then I went to NYU and was like, oh, fuck, this is not good. That was not okay. I said a lot of really fucked up shit. And now when people are like, hey, this person's a homophobe, like, let's call them out on it. I'm like, yeah, let's see if they'll realize what they're doing is wrong. And if they don't, I'm like, fuck them. And if they do, I'm like, see, that's good. That's step one. Now let's watch them and see if they continue to hold up this new standard, this new being good. And if they do, we can continue that forgiveness. And that
Okay, so no, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna bring this back around to like, so let's see if Matthias holds up this new standard. Okay, I'm bringing this back around.
The moderator
we've been going for almost 2 hours, and I'm already gonna have to edit this, which I fucking hate. So it's okay. No, listen. I can very easily cut that chunk of the conversation out, and I'm not mad that we had it because there's nothing wrong with having a conversation that is intelligent and where people are giving their opinions. And I really do believe that any disagreements that we possibly had during this have been based on just like kind of, you know, I don't want to say
Well, it's not even,
misunderstandings, but
like semantic knowledge and like, you know, like we
Well,
have the same moral beliefs. And I think that it
Yes.
just comes down to like sometimes experiences make you like see
yes,
things.
I think it's experiences, and I also think it's generational differences, and that shit happens, man.
Well, I was gonna say one thing. Well, life experiences do matter because
Yeah.
John, you froze.
now you
Oh,
answer
you
your
froze.
homophobia. I graduated 83. One of my
my
two
God.
best friends from
I
high
was
school
bored. Like,
came out of the closet in 1983 when I was in high school. And
oh wow.
the interesting dynamic of our group, of what happened with our friendships, was myself and one other guy, we simply didn't give a damn. It's like, oh, my initial thought is, well, I guess I just won't double date that often. But other than that, we weren't dating much anyway, so not a big deal. That was my initial, and then I said, that's even
Hashtag
stupid.
self-burn.
What?
Hashtag self-burn.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, so that wasn't even an issue. But another friend would never speak to him again, and like just sort of left our group because it was adamantly opposed. Two other friends, one had to hang out with us sort of on the sly because his parents didn't want art anywhere around. And then the final one was the most interesting, I thought, because he spent about 2 years trying to figure out how we as friends failed him. Because if we had been better friends, this wouldn't have happened.
Well,
so
Yeah.
it was just
Yikes.
so it was just a fascinating dichotomy of what happened there, and
Yeah. Also, hilariously, Jonathan, this is really good timing because literally 3 days ago, I was thinking about like, I should make a video addressing like cancel culture and why, the internet can turn something that's very good into something that can be perceived as bad because of just how things are presented, and why cancel culture in its essence is actually really important for accountability, etc. But cancel culture, as the internet and media makes it sound, just has such
I think it's the media. I think
Exactly. It's absolutely the media.
specifically.
Right.
But yeah.
It's not the real people, it's the media.
Oh,
well,
for
it's not just media and well, if you include social media as media.
social media is media.
it has to
the
be.
thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, yes, but again, when people are going off on it about social media, it's often because they're sharing articles.
Yeah.
That and not,
That are from bad sources.
Yeah.
A lot of the social media backlash that you see against it is people that have read the media that is being against it and sort of regurgitating that without even realizing it. A thing that's very important to realize in the age of social media is that everything that we consume, even on social media, that are quote unquote original thoughts by people, are all colored by the media and the content that they consume. So in a way, everything is media, just because we are what we see and we are what is advertised to us, and we are constantly advertised to in this modern day and age. And once again, this is something that seems knee-jerk obvious to me as somebody who's grown up in social media, but like trying to explain this to my dad is literally like talking to a brick wall. But like my dad,
don't even talk to me about my parents.
So he's even more clueless than I am.
Oh, absolutely. If I said the word Jonathan, I said meme to him and he unironically said memes. Oh, memes. And I was like,
memes. Oh, now I want them to be called memes.
I've always wanted that, honestly, because I've heard more than one person.
Where does that expression come from, though?
Memes. Actually, so I might know the history of this. I believe the word meme was actually a word that meant information in like a very compact and portable form. And because of that, the word sort of got taken and used for what is now seen as our modern memes. Hilariously, the reason I know this is because the company I work at is BioMeme, and I was like, haha, we're named after memes. And one of the CEOs was actually like, well, it really does mean information. Like, that's the historical use of the words, right? And I'm like, bitch, I didn't know, except I didn't say bitch because he's my boss. Also, speaking of standards of what's acceptable, it's kind of funny because I work in a startup now. So, I've been used to like very academia settings where like everybody's like pretty proper about like how they speak. And I literally work in a startup company where the F-bomb is dropped like every other moment. And I'm like, wow.
Well, Tara, it's interesting you said about generational because Talia heard me speaking to one of my employees and said, "Oh, you were so mean to them," and I was like, "I didn't think I was mean at all. I actually thought it was very calm and
Oh
collective."
my
And
God, same with my dad. He does
and
the
she-
same thing.
so I really had to think to myself, okay, if that was mean, I really got to think about this. But now I wanted to hear myself. But then I realized that I don't have a tape of it, so I can't like figure out what I did wrong.
Well, okay. We're gonna wrap this up because we're like literally just under 2 hours, and I actually have to go. I've had like 3 calls while we're on this somehow. Okay. So cancel culture in terms of Matthias, like, are we giving him like further chances?
We're not canceling him yet, or at least
Yeah.
I'm not.
We'll see how he does in Crooked Kingdom.
Yeah, exactly.
He has at least one more book.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And again, like, there's some things you can't really be forgiven for, but
you can still make amends.
Again, hashtag, let's remember this, guys. We love growth in this house.
We do.
So, and that's not just with the author. I hope that's with the characters as well. So I'm going to end this because we're like,
mention the hosts.
Yes, exactly. Hashtag we love growth in this house, all of us, because honestly, y'all would have hated me when I was in high school. Well, yeah, no, Jonathan probably wouldn't have, but yeah, I was not the greatest in high school either. I wasn't a bully, but you know.
Sarah, I feel like I would have been mean to you in high school, and that makes me really sad.
You probably would.
I probably mean to you too, Nick, and to you too, John. The more I think about it, I was like, I would have been terrible to all of you, which is just very sad because you're lovely.
All right, so we will be back on December 27th with a special holiday episode. We've still kind of like not totally decided what we're doing, but I do love the idea of reading. What was the play that you were talking about, Nick?
Oh, the best Christmas pageant ever.
Yes, best Christmas pageant ever. I do like the idea of that because honestly, it's probably the easiest thing we could possibly do.
Easier than how the Grinch Stole Christmas.
And yeah. So we literally just have to go through and like assign some parts and stuff. So like I feel like that would be fun. Like just listening to us be ridiculous assholes for like an evening.
Are we not ridiculous assholes for an evening? I'm
Could
pretty
you
sure
please send me the author of, so I can download that play?
Oh yes, also that.
Yeah. Again, like Nami, we be ridiculous assholes for an evening. Yeah, that's us. That's fine. All right. Well, wow. For anybody who actually watches this on YouTube, because we actually do have people who watch it on YouTube after the fact. Sorry for the total like off-topic everything, but like I do think it was a good discussion because I think these are things that need to be talked about.
I guess I don't need to make my cancel culture video. Already did it.
I will absolutely be cutting this down for the podcast. But thank you guys so much and have a lovely night. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.